The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. This is the Journey Radio Show, and hey, we are the She-Squatchers. I'm Jen Cruz, your host, and we've got Jenna Grover.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Tammy Trickle.
Hey, everybody.
And that's us, the She-Squatchers, and we've got an awesome guest again tonight. Mel Skahan is returning from Washington State because after last week's show, when we left the air, he started telling us even more cool stories. And I'm like, Mel, why do you keep doing this to me? We need to have this on the show. So he agreed to come back on and tell the stories. Hey, Mel, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me back. And I know the listeners are glad to have me. The viewers are glad to have me back too. And, after the show and everything, the last couple of times, you said that they've had questions and everything else like that. And I'd be happy to answer any of the questions and then continue on. And I'm looking forward to another great show today.
Awesome. Well, I'm trying to remember now. Now it's skipping my brain for a second. What was our list again? What were you going to share with us?
I know that one of the stories that he was telling was when you were camping and the click, 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 clicks of the
magnets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
yes.
magnets.
Yeah, can you tell that story?
Yeah. There's an area up here in Washington State that we found by accident. And my wife and I were looking for a place to camp. And there weren't too many off-roads anywhere. And this road that we had gone down was overgrown. So I had to walk the road in to make sure that didn't scratch up the car. And so we eventually found this landing. And what I mean by landing, the area was logged. And so it created this huge opening. And the surrounding trees were probably right around 5 years old, regenerated, replanted. And so we put our tent in this spot. And we just purchased this awning that had, instead of zippers, it had magnets. So it had like 5 or 6 magnets going down the material for one door and then on the other side. So there were 2 openings. And we set everything up and got it ready for the next morning, turned in for the night. And of course, you guys know the rule. I've talked about this for a couple of weeks now, is the snoring. Keep up the snoring to make sure that they're comfortable to come in.
Go, Tammy. So, Tammy will cover that one.
Look at her acting like she doesn't snore.
I know. We've discussed it. Look at her, look so innocent.
Oh, me? I'm cute. Yes, I snore. I snore great. If you're going to do something, be good at it.
Be loud and proud about that snoring, gol darn it.
Well, see, I snore so good that I bring the Sasquatches in. So there you go.
That's true.
There you go.
There you go.
So my wife, being the light sleeper and our non-communication, she's grabbing my arm and squeezing it to wake me up. And what she heard come in to camp was the stepping again on the rocks. It had approached the road. But before I get into it, again, when I go to these camping spots, I look for how I'm going to be approached. And that's exactly what I did as we were setting this camp up. The only way that they were going to come in on us, according to the markings, was the road. the road was heavily marked. The opening, there wasn't much hiding cover there for them, so I didn't see them coming in through, you know, as it was probably about 25 acres as big as this opening was. So I knew they were going to come in on the road. My wife wakes me up, grabbing my arm, and we hear this crunching sound on the gravel. And then you see this kind of a shadow that our tent is about 6 foot tall in height. And then you see the shadow over the top of it. And after I'm awakened by her, then I continue the snoring. And then as we're watching this thing just stand there, he didn't move. He was very still. But one thing that he did about 5-7 minutes into where he was at was that he smacked the top of the tent. And I'm guessing that he did that just to see if we were awake or checking on us on the inside to see if he'd get a reaction. So I kept up the snoring, and then this shadow took another step, and it was 3 feet further to our left. And one thing that I noticed that I share is that these things are so cautious of human activity in any camp to make sure that nobody's awake or movement, is that they'll stand in one spot for up to 15 minutes before they take another step. And we noticed that about this one, that, you know, he took his step, he stood there for 10 to 15 minutes, and then he took another one. So we knew we had the one. And then we started hearing this sound off to our left and couldn't figure it out. There was no wind. There was nothing abnormal about the weather. It was just a calm night. But we kept hearing this kind of screeching, crackling sound and didn't know what it was. And then as it continued, you kind of was like closing your eyes, heighten your hearing, and kind of figured it out after a while. What was going on was that there was more than one in the camp. There was possibly two there because of where he was standing and then where the other one was. And then all of a sudden you heard this click, 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 and then clack, clack, clack. And I was like, wow, what is that? And actually you hear it just seconds later, click, 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 clack, clack, clack. And what it was the awning. The awning had magnets instead of zippers for the opening and closing of the fabric, the door. So you kept hearing this click, 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 clack, 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 clack. And that was the magnets coming back together. Now there's no wind at all for this to be blowing open and closing. So then you'd hear this click, 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 and it was opening it faster. Then you hear click, 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 click. And it was just playing and having fun with this click, 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 click. And then we heard the sound from the other side of the awning as well. The magnets on that side going click, 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 clack, clack, clack. And then after they got playful with it, then that's all you heard was 15-20 minutes of this click, 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 clack, 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 click, 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 click. And the big one standing by the tent was still there. And then he tapped the top of the tent again. And I'm inside of the tent going, and the first time that this happened, I had an audio recorder with me, it was an older model, so it didn't pick up sound very well, but enough for loud noises. And I had an extended microphone on it, and I slowly opened the zipper to the front door of the tent because we had a large opening covering a vestibule over the front, and I slid the microphone outside and started recording. And so what we were still hearing were these two going off at the awning, click, 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 click. And they were just having a blast with it. And then we heard shuffling on the inside of the awning. We didn't set everything out, the dishes or anything else like that. But we had some items on the table on the inside, and you can hear those being moved, scraping along the top of the table there. And then click, 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 click. So we either had 3 or 4 going on for visitors that night. And so again, I've said before, to pay respect to them, to let them know what we're doing, my wife had to go to the bathroom. And so I announced, okay, we're going to come out. My wife has to go to the bathroom. And then it just got quiet. We gave them a couple minutes and did the zipper. And then we went outside, looked at everything, and noticed that the awning that we had set up had been moved. And so that was the first thing that caught our eye. We already knew that the doors were being played with because they had magnets on them. And then that was really the only thing that was out of, was different from when we set it up. And then, so went out, finished our business, got something to drink, came back into the tent, and then laid down there for a while, gave myself a few minutes, and then I started snoring again. And then about a half hour later, they came the same exact way that they approached the first time with the big one, standing by the tent, seeing his shadow right here on our right-hand side, then moving slowly over to the left, taking again up to 15 to 30 minutes to move from 3 steps from this side to over to here. And then kept on snoring. And then he again tapped the top of the tent and then kept the snoring going. And then all of a sudden you just heard the magnets going to town again. Click, 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 click. And it was, I wouldn't say unnerving, but it was great to hear something like that and then begin to wonder, you know, that to us magnets, you know, we know what they do, but to them, they've never seen anything like this before. And at least not this bunch. And so all they were doing was like an infant playing with a new toy. It was just out there just having fun with it. And they didn't destroy the tent or the awning, and they didn't destroy the inside of the tent of the awning either. And because when we came back, or when we got up the next morning, because we just let them go, and we let them. They were there for 3-4 hours, just playing with the magnets, and you know, just eventually just nodded off to go to sleep and everything, and let them do whatever they were going to do. Woke up the next morning, went outside to the awning, and I had said earlier that the awning was kind of offset when we had gone out earlier, and but when we came out that morning, the awning was right back in its spot that we set it up, and nothing, like I said, nothing was destroyed like you would say, you know, if a bear or mice or whatever else would have got into the awning to move things about. So, you know, the learning experience from this is that, you know, we've established a relationship with them, because we've been back to that spot many times, and they remember us because we always pack the same stuff. And when we packed the awning, it's like, oh, look, you know, Mel's here. Let's hope he brought the magnet awning again, you know, and sure
And the
enough, we did.
toys. Yeah, I suppose they think you're like Santa Claus bringing all those fun things out there. I actually do have an honest question. Okay, doesn't the back of your throat get sore with you having to snore for so long?
Well, I mean, I don't do it really loud. I mean, and then I have water on the inside if I have to, you know, get something to drink to maintain it. But after a while, if you maintain not the snoring, but just kind of like the heavy breathing, you know, as long as they can hear and notice that you're sleeping, then that's the key there.
I have a question from the chat room. It's from Sherry, and she wants to know, do you think that they like whistling by humans and also instruments and music?
I've been out with plenty of groups that take drums out with them, and people bring guitars and all kinds of different instruments out there to play, and that seems to draw them in as well. Anything positive, really. If gunshots, loud noises, fireworks, that stuff, just upsets a lot of people, if you're doing it in your backyard as well. And so, but instruments, yes, they don't seem to bother them. They seem to be enjoying the sound of the music. And whistling, it's one of our things that we're taught not to do at night. We're taught not to take any negative emotion, not to cry, not to be drinking alcohol, not to whistle while we're out in the woods, because that draws a bunch of the negative energy towards you. So whistling, depending on your beliefs, go right ahead if you want.
Actually, I've heard not to whistle up here too after dark.
Mm-hmm.
From from the tribes, they say don't whistle, and nobody ever says why. They say you shouldn't.
Yeah, because that's the form of communication for them. And if you're out there whistling, that's you're kind of like not necessarily speaking the language, but along that barrier of their communication. And
it draws in other entities besides cryptids.
And what are you talking about?
Mimics, skinwalkers,
okay.
Those kinds of things are attracted to whistling and crying babies and things like that at night.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, there we go. No whistling.
There you go.
So I pulled up the list that you sent me of topics that you were going to cover, and you said something about your sister's pickup hunting story.
Oh, now I want to ask you guys a question, you gals a question. What do you know about them drawing energy from our electronics?
We had that happen. Jenna and I were out at we found this large den-like stick structure, and it was huge. It was like a house, and it was very intricately built. It was trees stacked on top of each other, and then the branches were like weaved together so tightly that they wouldn't come apart. There was no tying or nails or screws or anything like that. And it was on the reservation. If it had been native built, they would have tied it, but this was just weaved together. It was insanely awesome. Anyway, we went out there at night. Well, went out there and it ended up getting dark, and all of a sudden, all of our equipment just died. All of it. Like I have a 6-month charge battery on my this big flashlight that I have, and it had just been charged, and it started going on, off, on, off, on, off, and then it just died. And you were like, just got charged. And like everything was dying, and the only stuff that didn't die was what I wasn't using in my pack. And the only thing I had left in my pack was 2 headlamps and my cell phone. My cell phone got zapped down to 13%. So I handed Jenna a headlamp, and I put a headlamp on, and I had my cell phone in my hand.
And now remember, these are dim headlamps too, because these are not, the batteries in them were not the strongest.
Yeah. And Larry was along with us on the reservation, and he had gone back to the truck, walked back to the truck because all of his stuff had gone dead and he was cold. So he was going to go warm up in the truck. And so Jenna and I are out there, and every time I turned off the light on my phone, which was much brighter than my headlamp, there was movement coming in around us. Like you could hear them, because it's towards the end of October. All the leaves are crunchy on the ground. So when something walks, it's really loud. And so as soon as I turned the light off, everything would come in closer, and I'd be like, light on. Because that was super creepy because we couldn't see it. And I'm like, why is it that every time I turn the light off, they're like coming in and closer? And I'm like, don't come closer. We're not ready for that right now. Because they were pretty close. And we were just decided, okay, it's time to go. But we couldn't, we were having trouble finding the trail out of there because it was so dark. And I ended up calling Larry to come back. I thought he could drive up the trail and bring the car closer so we'd have light so we could find it. But instead he starts walking up. He grabbed a new flashlight from the truck, and he starts walking up. And as he gets closer, his new flashlight starts dying. So that's happened to us.
Wow. Yeah. I've never really experienced that because even when I did take electronics and stuff out there, there was really not much activity. And once I started leaving the electronics at home, then announcing to them that I was just there to camp and everything, my activity changed. I was having more activity with them, even while at work. When I would go out into the woods to do my jobs, I'd always tell them what I had with me, and put my hands up to show them that I was just out to do my work. And so I started keeping the electronics at home. But this event that happened to my sister was within the last couple of months, and my sister, has been, listening to my stories and for the last 35, 40 years now, and she's not an outdoors person. I mean, she's a fisherwoman, so she'll go out fishing on the Columbia for commercial fishing, and that's about it. Goes to the woods. As long as I've known her, since she was born, even our dad taking her out as a baby, maybe 4 times. So when I mean not an outdoors person, she's not. So she got invited to go visit an in-law, and they were going to go do some moose hunting, and so it was over in Idaho, and so she calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm going to go moose hunting. What do I need?" I said, "Well, you can have my rifle. You can take all the stuff that you need, and stop by and pick it up." And so she goes over, and then she shows me the pictures of her boots, and she's got rubber boots on, nothing for ankle support or anything. And I said, "You're going to be walking on hillsides. This is a ankle support." She goes, "I'll be all right." But no, she wasn't. So the person that she was going to pick up, one of the hunters of the group of 3 that were going to work this area, they all met up and they all made their plan, and so they were going to go out to their spot. And when they got there, it was early in the morning, before daylight, and she had the truck going. She drove her truck over there, and she just had it tuned up. And when she pulled up to the spot, the hunter that was with her, he said, "Whatever happens, don't open your eyes." And she didn't know what he meant by that. And she's sitting there confused. Truck is going and everything, and then he says, "Whatever happens, don't open your eyes. Just let him do what he's going to do, and he will leave." And so she's just like, what are you talking about?" And then all of a sudden you heard this noise rustling around outside the truck. And then when that noise started going, that's when the pickup died. She tried to turn it back on, and it was completely dead. No power. And he goes, "Keep your eyes closed. Don't pay attention to it. Let it do what it's going to do, and it'll leave. You make a sound, that'll keep him around. So no sounds, no screaming. Keep your eyes closed." And he's whispering this to her as she's sitting next to her. And all of a sudden, this shadow started walking back and forth in front of the truck. And then she was so scared to death. She was clenching. She was ready to scream, but couldn't scream. She was so scared, kept her eyes closed, and remembered to not say anything. And then it moved to her side of the truck and brushed up against the truck, and then circled the truck a couple of times, making this whoop, 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 whoop. And then eventually it would, every so often, would brush up against the truck, and it would move them. And so sitting there inside, eyes clenched, closed, fists and everything, ready to just scream her lungs out. And the guy goes, "Don't make a sound." And so this thing made another circle around in front of him, and then went to her side into the back. And then it jumped into the back of her bed of her pickup. And then it rocked in the back of the truck, and it was making the whooping and the growling sounds and everything like that. And she's doing everything in her power not to make a sound. And all she could say was the guy that was next to her at the time was so calm and trying to, keep to his portion of the deal of keeping quiet, not giving it any notice or power to continue. And so it jumped out of the truck and then circled a couple more times and then whooped, growled, and then she said it stunk something awful. It was the putrid, the classic, garbage, rotted garbage, wet dog type sulfur smell that she was describing to me. And she goes, I almost puked. And I was like, that's a pretty intense story you're telling me. She goes, I never expected it to happen to me, but it did. And she goes, it circled us one more time and then it was gone. And I couldn't move. I couldn't say anything. And after a while, I went to start the truck up and it kicked right over, just first time. And she goes, then we started, I put it in gear and then we got out of the H out of the area. And I was like, so now what do you think about him? She goes, I don't think I'm ever going to go back out to the woods again. And I'm not going to go hunting with these people in this area ever again. And I was like, well, you can make those promises, but at some point you're going to, they know you now.
Wow,
Yes.
That was a great story. Oh my gosh, that was like so intense. I can't imagine being in the bed and that would be so scary because it's the unknown, and to be quiet, but I suppose with that person sitting next to her was probably helping her a lot with being calm and everything. But that would be crazy scary.
If he wasn't there, then she definitely would have lost it, would have been screaming, and then who knows, eventually probably just got out of the truck. But thank that guy was there to keep her calm.
So we will not expect her to be going out with you next time.
No, when you guys come over, when people tell you stories of events like this, I will definitely introduce you to my sisters when you guys come over in April. My sister, and she'll even when she tells to me to this day, it's it's nerve-wracking for her.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm excited. If we're done with that story, your next story on the list was BFRO Expedition Encounter, and we've got 2 minutes before break, so we might have to cut it and go to it.
I can set it up. I mean, we all know who the BFRO is, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. And back in 2004 is when they started the expeditions up here in Washington State. And I fortunately was part of the group at that time and was invited as an investigator at that time to come over out with the participants and share stories and, eventually show them my knowledge of the woods, not only my portion of the woods as far as being forestry background. And so I had gone over to the Olympic Peninsula to join the group. I figured that was going to be long enough.
Oh, funny. Nope, keep going.
So
we can go to break now. We'll go to break now and we'll be back in 2 minutes, everyone. Stay tuned. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now we're on commercial break. So here's the necklace, everybody. I'm trying to promote Jenna's necklace, Bigfoot necklaces on the show.
Here's our
So-
shirt.
Thank you. Yes, those are She-Squatcher
Yeah.
shirts too. By the way, I do custom jewelry. So if there's something you see or like, just tell me and we make it. Oh!
You said it.
I totally didn't mean that. I'm putting myself on mute.
Oh, that's just Jenna. She's always saying stuff that comes out sounding really interesting, and she doesn't mean it. So then we just laugh and laugh.
And she gets embarrassed and puts herself on mute.
Yes, yes.
Except when it's in person, and then she just kind of tries to hide
Yeah, you're right.
and blames us for being perverted.
They are. You guys are. Everything I say.
No, you say it.
I don't mean it though. I just meant like the
The necklace.
necklace, yes. Even
So
though I
Jenna-
can't.
Jenna's website is gbythesea.com, and you can click on Shop a Bigfoot to find all the Bigfoot specific items. And she's got free shipping on her website right now. So hurry up and place your orders if you want them there by Christmas. Whoop, whoop. gbythesea.com. I never take my Bigfoot necklace off. It showers with me. It sleeps with me. Doesn't tarnish me or doesn't tarnish and it doesn't turn me green, which I'm pretty sensitive to cheap metals, and it's not a cheap metal, that's for sure. So,
Definitely. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. You are such a good person.
well, you say try it out and give it some hard work, and I have. All right, let's listen for Sarge.
I said go 15 seconds ago.
Oh, thanks, Sarge. Well, welcome back to the show, everyone. We're the She-Squatchers. When you check us out online at She-Squatchers.com, and at the top of the page, you can find the link to our events page, and you can see where we're going to be. We're going to be in April. We'll be in Washington State and Toppenish and the Yakama Indian Reservation with Mel Skahan, our guest tonight. So you have to check that out and come and see us if you are available to come there. And we are on YouTube at She-Squatchers Official. Won't you please subscribe to our channel and like our pages on Facebook and Instagram under She-Squatchers Official. So back to Mel's story about his BFRO encounter.
Well, before I get into the story, I just want to say that, I met you gals a couple years ago, and I got to enjoy your presentation very much. That, I made communication with you afterwards. And sorry, just got a text. Sorry. But and then I enjoyed my conversations with you to find out, who you were, who you are, and your positions on this area. And the first thing that I did was the promoter, the Yakama city of Yakama that was putting on the Bigfoot Con. I went to them immediately and said they have to invite you, because what you see, what I've noticed over the years is a male dominated conferences everywhere, and I wanted to get away from that. And so I said, let's make this 95% female. And so we invited you, and then the local speakers that are going to be there as well are all female as well. And just the mates being along with them are the 5%. And so they were all in on this. And so I'm glad that you accepted the invitation and are coming over, and looking forward to having you there.
We are
Oh.
super excited. We're super excited to come out there and go to Yakama and see the place and go out in the field with you and just visit with everybody there. We're really excited about that.
Okay. Well, with that out of the way now, I feel better because I've been wanting to say that for the last couple of weeks now, and our position here on the Yakama Reservation as far as putting on this conference, and the first thing was to make it more of a female gathering for everybody to come in, and so the BFRO started to put on these expeditions, and I got to meet a lot of new folks. And the reason I was with the BFRO is because when I was with the Yakama, working the Yakama Reservation and Forestry Program, I was having all these events happening to me that I could not explain, and locally nobody wanted to talk to me about them. So I sought the help of some organization, and the first group that showed up was the BFRO, and then eventually met the group, and then invited out different places, attend different things, and then the expeditions. And it was on one of these expeditions that I got to meet an airline pilot named John Callender, and then I got to meet Dirty Steve and the other Steve, and we would break up into groups, and we were working on the Olympic Peninsula at the time, and then one thought process was that, well, they're always seen crossing Highway 101. And so one evening we got like 6 different vehicles with 2 to 3 people per vehicle and staged them out along Highway 101 to see if we'd get any visits from a Sasquatch. And so when you're sitting in a car for an hour and a half with 3 or 4 other people inside, males, you're kind of like, all right, I need to get out of here. I've had enough. I'll even walk the 8 miles back to camp if I have to. And so I said, I'm going for a walk. And then somebody goes, well, where are you going? I said, I don't know. I'm going to go walk down to the next group, which is about 3/4 of a mile down the way. And the guy goes, oh, I'll join you. So he's walking with me, and we're walking down the road. And then he goes, well, what's going on? I said, we're just 2 people broke down along the highway, and we're trying to get home. I said, we're not looking for anything. If something follow us, we'll radio ahead and let them know. So I said, just act normal, talk, and then we'll just keep walking. And we got about 10 minutes into the walk, and then we off to the right side. On his side, I heard this. And this sound I've heard before. I've heard this walking my forestry job back home. And it's the sound, I intensified it here to let people hear it, but it was a lot lower in pitch. And it felt like it was directed at me because it went right through me and it felt like electricity. And I turned to him immediately and I said, did you hear that? He goes, I didn't hear anything. I said, did you feel it? He goes, no, I didn't hear anything. And I was just like, it's right there off the side of the road. And I said, just keep walking. And he goes, what was it, Mel? And I was like, I don't know. I've heard this sound plenty of times, da, da, da. And I told him, I said, let's just keep walking. We're going to radio ahead, let them know that we're coming, that we possibly have something following us to get off the side of the road. And just keep talking. And so we eventually caught up with the next group, walked past them, and then turned around and came back, and they said nothing was following us. And I was like, I told them, filled them in on what was going on. I said, I'm going back up in there. And so if anybody wants to come back up with me, that's fine. And so while we were walking, the guy that was walking with me was an airline pilot. And he goes, Mel, he goes, I'm an airline pilot. I'm around loud engines all the time, da, 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 and so I don't have the best hearing. He goes, what did you hear back there? And I was like, well, it was loud enough for anybody to hear, but now that you let me know what's going on, that your hearing is kind of impaired, that I'm not gonna get into it with him. So the first person that volunteers to come back with me is the airline pilot, and I was like, oh, you didn't hear it the first time. And I'm glad that one of the Steves, you know, he says, I'll go with you. And he's from the Midwest. I don't remember his location. I think it's the eastern Montana area. And I never met him before, but I eventually got to know him a little bit better after the expedition and everything. And so he goes, I'll go. He goes, I've never had a Bigfoot experience, and I'm looking forward to this. So we're walking back up, and we're talking, da-da-da-da-da. Now there's 3 of us instead of 2. And who knows, you know, may interact with us again, it may not. And so as we're approaching the spot, I tell him, I said, it's up here on the left-hand side. It's right, we're approaching it. Just keep talking, see it happens again. And so we walk and nothing. And so I said, we'll go up to the logging road up ahead to the left, and then we'll do a couple of vocalizations. And it's a clear night. Moon wasn't quite out yet. And so we make it to the logging road, and we have a Gen 3 and a Gen 2 night vision with us. And so I walk ahead of them, and I do my vocalization. And at the time, this vocalization that I did was 1 breath, but I can't do that in 1 breath. I have to break it up into 3. So I just do this. And so I did that twice and nothing. And I said, well, let's go further up the road. It kind of curves back to the backside of where this thing was at. And then we'll see if we'll do it again. We make it about 100 yards further up. And I said, okay, I'm going to walk ahead of you. And I'm going to do the same vocalization again. And as soon as I finished the second one, then that's when silence became a freight train. It started to the south of us, and then it just started running. And you could hear this thing going through the trees, breaking branches off the trees, snap, 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 and then crunching everything else underneath its feet as it's running towards us. And you could hear it coming off the hill, and you could hear it go left, you can hear it go right, straight, left, down. I mean, you could hear every step and every directional turn that it was making. And then we started pointing at the direction that it was coming from. And then I grabbed the 2 guys, and then they had the night vision with them, and then I put them in front of me, and then it stopped. And the reason that it stopped was because that was the edge of the timber. We were out in the middle of a clear cut where the road was in a clear cut area. So it stopped at the edge of the timber line, and then you could hear it breathing. And just breathing hard. And we knew exactly where it was. We kept pointing right at it, and I kept directing these guys with the night vision. It's right there. It's right there. But in the meantime, my heart rate is elevated. I'm just going zonkers with the emotion that is going through me, that I was thinking of myself, and I used these guys. I used these guys as shields. So I pulled them in front of me, and then I backed up a little bit, and then I kept pointing. I said, it's right there. And they said, we don't see anything. And then but you can hear this going, and I was like, it's right there. And so I close my eyes, and I'm listening to this thing just breathe, and you can hear it swaying back and forth and on its feet and everything like that. And then off in the distance, further to the south, and you can hear a car coming up 101. And then that's when everything changed. When the car got closer to us from the south going north, this Bigfoot started moving back up the hillside, up the little hill that it came off of. And then as soon as the car was right directly beside us, he or she was in the spot where, I'm assuming, where she took off or he took off from. So either it thought that we had somebody else coming in, or it was protecting itself to get back into cover away from everybody, from more people coming in. And so that was one of the very first events on one of the expeditions that we had with the BFRO. And then it was the first time that thermal was ever, and I know Matt's Moneymaker is going to get upset with me saying this, but it's one of the first times we'd ever used thermal, and nobody had really set it up before. And it was in pieces, not ready for use. So we radioed to camp and told them we had activity, and then they're running back and forth into different vehicles trying to find all the pieces to put this thing together to get it down to us to take to see if we can find and locate this. And it took about an hour before they got there. And so by the time we got the thermal out there, it was too late. But we had an exciting story to tell anyway.
That is an exciting story. Go ahead, Jemmy.
We know all about not having our equipment ready when we get out of the vehicle.
Oh my gosh, I think I just burped a little in my mouth.
We've done it a few times.
Tammy.
We learn as we go.
Yes. Oh, it was so close.
And it's one thing that I've always enjoyed as I've gotten to, reenact and tell not only just what happens to me, but whatever happens to witnesses that I talk to. Because one thing that I'm reluctant to do is, I go, what noise did it make? And it was like, I don't know, it made this bird call, and then I would whistle for him. And then it whooped. And then I go, well, what did the whoop sound of? Like, was it male? Was it female? Was it high pitch? Was it low pitch? And then, so I would do it for him, and I would go, was it this whoop? Or was it a whoop? And I was like, it was more of the high pitched one. I was like, well, don't have to be embarrassed to do it anymore. I mean, just
a lot of people are embarrassed to do those Bigfoot calls.
Yeah, they
go to an event and do a Bigfoot calling contest and see how many people don't sign up for that.
Yeah, it's surprising.
I would be right up there to do that. There was another event with the BFRO where Matt had me out there for 4 hours screaming off ridge lines, and I couldn't talk the next morning. My throat was so sore from screaming all night. No activity.
Well, you were singing up a song for him anyway, I suppose. We're running out of time already, and we've got Bigfoot standing next to our truck, salmon fishing at night and having a 2x4 tossed at us, and Bigfoot clocked at 37 miles an hour. That's the one I want to hear about.
The 37-mile-an-hour one. There's been 4 stories here I've done on the Yakama Reservation where people have been chased out in vehicles, and they've looked in the mirrors to see them still right behind them, and they would look down at the speedometer to see how fast they were going. There were times they were doing 20, 25, 30, and they said the max speed that we were doing is about 30, 35 miles an hour, and he was still right behind us. So the story on this one is that he was a co-worker of mine, and we know the negativity about crying and alcohol and doing all this negative stuff out in the woods. That's what was going on here. His brother-in-law was going through some tough times, and so he was drinking alcohol. He was crying at night. He brought all this sadness out to the woods, and so that's they just pulled over someplace to not go back to the house. And so they're talking inside the vehicle, and my coworker is the one that's driving, and it's his brother-in-law that's going through this event, and he goes to sleep. Eventually falls asleep. My coworker at the wheel, and wakes up to this choking sound, this, and he looks over at his brother-in-law, and he's got his hand pointed out the front windshield. And so he turns his attention out to the front window, and then he saw this Sasquatch coming up the hillside from where they were at, walk up to the crest of the hill to the front of the vehicle, and turned the headlights on it and saw what it was, started the vehicle up, and this area that he eventually took me out to was littered with huge rocks, and they were driving an older. This took place in like the late 70s, early 80s, and so that type of vehicle, sedan. And I go, how did you avoid these big rocks out. He goes, it wasn't easy. He says, sometimes I just skipped over them. And and then the road that they were on was, he goes, the road still looks the same. And I was like, it was a windy road, potholes, holes, rocks. And I go, how did you avoid all this stuff and breaking your vehicle in pieces? He goes, it wasn't easy. And he goes, what was going on here was that when it came up to the front of the vehicle, I put it in reverse, and then I hit the road, and then we took off forward. And then as I looked back, I had the brake lights to maneuver around, and I could see it in the back, the rearview mirror. And then so I stepped on the gas, and we just went for it, and we were going to get out of here. And he goes, the fastest that I saw myself going was right around 37 miles an hour. And as I looked in the mirror, it was still right behind us. It was right on the passenger side door panel, rear door panel. And I was like, wow. I go, that's quite the event. And he goes, get this. He goes, the road was on a ridge line, and then we hit this drainage, and then there was another knoll. So this road went straight and then went around the drainage and then ran around this knoll into another drainage and then out. He goes, it left us when we made that turn, and I didn't see it anymore. But when I got back over on the other side of the tributary, the drainage here, it popped up right next to us. So he didn't follow us along the road. It cut across, and it met us at this point. And then he goes, that's when we just kept going. And then eventually we hit the main road. And eventually, this area that he was talking about is the same area that I collected the hairs from, and the Bigfoot hairs. And so he said they hit the main road, and then they were out of there. And he never told anybody the story until like about 20 years later when he told me. And the only reason that he was talking to me about it was because we were working the same spot that the Bigfoot had come out of the drainage, and which is, coincidentally called the Devil's Pocket.
Is it called the Devil's Pocket?
I think they found out.
As you were talking about it running 37 miles an hour, I looked up, I was trying to remember how fast does a cheetah run. And so I looked it up. They run 50 to 80 miles per hour. A lion runs 50 miles per hour. Leopards are 36, gazelles 60, jaguars 50, hippos at 30, dogs, German shepherds at 30, tigers 30 to 40 miles per hour, and a wolf is 31 to 37.
Yeah.
That's
those are some fast animals. And I'm pretty sure that, if they could go a lot faster, because I've tracked them running from witnesses from doing, the 1 foot side by side stance to 2 feet to 4 feet to 6 feet to 8 feet to 9 feet in the stride on a pretty good run. I mean, to have a 9 foot stride on a run, I mean, it was something to see. Because when you work the woods and you work in the snow, especially, we used to see this a lot with coyotes or cats, whether it be a bobcat, a lynx, or a cougar, hunting rabbits. And then you'd see where the rabbit was standing, and then you would see how the cougar or the predator would approach it, and then you would see the rabbit dart off, and just reading the tracks. And then you would see you would follow it, and then you would see the chase, and you would see where the animal either rolled or did this type of maneuver to get away, and then you followed it. And that's how I became better at knowing what animals are going to do, is to be able to follow them like this, to see that life that was out there. And then eventually, of course, you would like to have the rabbit have a good ending and go on to live his life. But, during this event, he did not. And so to see something like this is how I connect the different types of Sasquatch tracks that I've located in the woods. And I've seen family units where you would follow their tracks and you would see that the male is the protector as he's looking over the other two or other three, depending on who's in the group. And then it would be a female or even a little one. I mean, the smallest tracks that I've ever found out there are 8 inches. And you would see the childlike movement out of him as I followed him. How he would go up on the hillside, running through the trees, running down the logs. He eventually came across a log and then ran to the end of the log and then kind of springboarded on it. And then you could see where he jumped off of it and then, landed and started running around some more. And then he would go down and meet up with the mother again. And then they would take a few steps down the way and then he would just take off again. And so the only way I can describe that is the family circle cartoon where they tell the kid, you go straight to school, and then he goes through the playground and you see him, the hash marks going through the playground equipment. And then eventually, he takes off and goes to school. So that's what this looked like, in the tracks that I used to follow.
Very cool. Very cool. We have just a few minutes left. Which story do you want to tell us?
What do we have left?
Salmon fishing.
The fishing one. I mean, we always hear stories of people in canoes or boats out on lakes or rivers, natives fishing and everything. And that's what we were doing. We were fishing this lake, and there were probably right around 30 people around us on this lake in different areas. And we pulled up to our fishing net, and there were 3 of us on the boat. And all of a sudden, you didn't hear anything, but you heard something on the shoreline, and this sound like a 2x4 or something like that. It was manufactured material, and then it hit the water, and it hit the water right next to us. And then another one you could hear hit the shoreline, and it was like, well, somebody's over there, trying to chase us off for some odd reason. But it wasn't one of the other participants in this area. It was an actual Sasquatch, because what we heard next was we heard this grunt, and then the hillside was like this out of that lake. And we heard this thing running up the hill. And then it went up. I mean, I walk and hike the woods, all my life. And for something to do that quick is pretty near impossible. And it wasn't loud. It was, you could hear it going up the hill. And then what we kind of figured out is that, hey, Sasquatch, possibility 110% Sasquatch, because there was nobody there. And if we wanted to put a spotlight on it, we could have hit it with a spotlight, but no, we just let it do whatever it was going to do. It was probably mad because, hey, probably wanted something out of the net, and it was probably right there. So, I feed him too.
As you should. Share.
Yeah.
Share. And that music tells us we're coming to the end of the show. And I just want to thank Mel again for coming and being with us. And Mel Skahan from Washington State. You can find him on Facebook. And if you'd like to contact him, he is there. And anybody who'd like to get in touch with him can also get a hold of me if you can't find him. So thank you, Mel. I can't wait to see you again in April when we come out there.
Very excited.
So excited.
And looking forward to you. Looking to share Sasquatch adventure on this show when you guys go back.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.